AITA for setting strict boundaries after my girlfriend friend-zoned me. We met through a group of mutual friends, and the spark between us was instant. Within a few months, we were in a serious relationship. Jessica was an incredibly affectionate person. She was always looking out for me and had a very clear vision for her life. From the start, she spoke often about wanting stability and building something that would last. Coincidentally, I was at a point in my life where those same ideas felt logical and even desirable. Because of that, our relationship progressed smoothly, without many doubts or conflicts. After about a year together, we decided to take the next step and move in together. It was not an impulsive decision. On the contrary, we discussed it calmly and planned it out. We looked at several apartments until we found one we both loved. Although the lease ended up officially being in my name due to my steadier credit history, we both considered it our home. As for the finances, I covered almost everything. I paid the rent, the utilities, the groceries, and most of our day-to-day expenses. Jessica worked, but her income as a freelance graphic designer was quite inconsistent, so over time, I naturally fell into the role of the primary provider. Honestly, it never bothered me. In fact, I saw it as a normal part of being in a committed partnership. To me, it was not a sacrifice, but an investment in the future I believed we were building together. Our daily life was simple but comfortable. During the week, we would both go to our respective jobs and usually have dinner together in the evening. Sometimes we would binge watch a series, and other times we would just talk about our day. On weekends, we often went out to eat, saw friends, or planned short road trips to get a change of scenery. We also talked about the future frequently. We dreamed about longer vacations, discussed the idea of moving to a bigger house, and even floated the possibility of getting married and having kids someday. There were no set dates or concrete plans, but everything seemed to be moving naturally in that direction. That is why what happened next caught me completely by surprise. I remember the day perfectly. The strange thing was, there was no fight or argument leading up to it. I had not noticed any obvious signs that something was wrong, at least not from my perspective. It was a typical afternoon. I came home from work feeling a little tired, like usual, and when I walked into the apartment, I found her sitting in the living room. There was something off about her demeanor. She was calm, almost too calm. Then she said the 5 words that always signal trouble. "We need to talk." That phrase instantly creates a sense of dread, but even then, I could not have imagined what I was about to hear. I thought maybe she had a problem at work, a personal issue, or even a minor disagreement between us that we could resolve. She sat across from me, remained silent for a few seconds, and finally said something I still remember verbatim. She told me that it would be best if we just stayed friends. She said she cared about me a lot as a person and did not want to lose me completely, but she felt we were not working as a couple anymore. At first, I did not even process it. It was as if someone had suddenly muted the entire world. I just stared at her for a moment before asking her to explain what was really going on. I did not raise my voice or interrupt her. All I wanted was to understand. She sighed and explained that she felt trapped by the monotony of our routine. According to her, our daily life was emotionally draining her. She also mentioned that she did not feel the same way she used to, and that continuing the relationship would not be fair to either of us. She added that she preferred to end things before it got to the point of being unfaithful or doing something worse. That last part hurt more than I can describe. Not because it implied a potential affair, but because she said it as if it were a looming, almost unavoidable possibility. Still, I tried to remain composed. I told her that while it was painful to hear, I appreciated her honesty. I would rather face a difficult truth than live in a comfortable lie. I did not beg her to stay. I did not try to convince her to change her mind. A part of me was in complete shock, but another part knew that if she truly did not want to be with me, the most dignified thing I could do was let her go. However, something started to feel off. As we were talking, I noticed a suitcase sitting near the door. It was not a duffel bag or a hastily packed tote. It was a large, hard-shell suitcase, the kind you take on a long trip. That caught my eye because, until that moment, I assumed this conversation was a spur-of-the-moment decision. I asked her about it. She hesitated for a split second before telling me she had been thinking about this for a while and needed some space. She said she was going away for a few days to clear her head. Without a word, I stood up and unzipped one of the outer pockets of the suitcase. Inside, I found a printout of a flight confirmation. At that moment, my confusion began to morph into something else, a cold feeling I could not quite place. I asked her where she was going. I also asked how long she had been planning this trip and why she had never mentioned it. She looked at me with an expression I had never seen before and replied with a chilling coldness. "That's not your concern anymore. We're just friends now." That sentence hit me like a physical blow. Friends. Hearing that word, used in that way, after 2 years of sharing a home, after so many plans and a life built together, felt completely absurd. Even so, I did not argue. I did not lash out or try to stop her. I simply nodded. She grabbed her suitcase, walked to the door, and just before leaving, she said that a lot of her things were still in the apartment, but she would be back to get them later. And then she was gone. Suddenly, I was alone in the apartment, surrounded by the objects that, just minutes before, had been part of our shared life. Her clothes were still in the closet, her skincare products lined the bathroom counter, and the photos we had taken over the years were still on the shelves. Everything seemed to scream that our story had not ended naturally, but had been abruptly cut short. That night, I did not sleep, and the tears did not come right away. I just sat in the living room for hours, replaying every conversation from the past few months in my head. I searched for clues I might have missed, for words whose true meaning I had not understood at the time. I asked myself over and over if I had really been that blind, or if I had simply been too trusting. What bothered me most was not just the breakup itself, but the overwhelming feeling that I was the last to know. Everything felt too calculated. The conversation, the packed suitcase, the plane tickets, and the way she left without a second glance. Still, I tried to be rational. I told myself that maybe she just needed time, that maybe there were things I did not understand yet. I resolved to handle this like an adult, to accept the end of a relationship without turning it into a war. At that moment, I had no idea that by taking her proposal of being just friends literally, I would completely alter the dynamic between us, and that eventually, she would be the one to regret ever saying those words. But that would come later. The days that followed were strange. There were no texts, no calls, no further explanations. Jessica had simply vanished from my life. I tried to stick to my normal routine, go to work, come home, make a simple dinner. But the silence in the apartment was deafening. Despite that, I did not feel despair. It was more of a rare mix of disappointment and a clarity that had arrived far too late. It was on social media that the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. 2 days after she left, the first post appeared, a photo of her on a beautiful beach, with the ocean stretching out behind her. She was smiling, wearing an outfit I knew well. The next day, more pictures followed. Breakfasts overlooking the water, walks along the shore at sunset, and colorful tropical drinks. None of the photos explicitly showed anyone with her, but it did not seem like she was alone. The message was clear. She was not taking time to think or reflect on our relationship. She was on vacation. In that moment, I understood exactly what those plane tickets were for. Strangely, I did not feel jealous. What I felt was something different, a sort of emotional detachment. It was as if a part of me had stepped back from the situation and was now viewing it from a distance. While I was at home trying to process the end of a 2-year relationship, she was out celebrating her newfound freedom. And that stark contrast, instead of breaking me, pushed me to make a very clear decision. I decided to take her at her word. If she said we were just friends now, then I was going to treat her exactly like I would any other friend, with no special privileges, no exclusive access, and none of the considerations typically reserved for a significant other. A friend does not just walk into your home whenever they please. A friend does not have a key to your apartment, and a friend certainly does not leave their belongings to take up space in your life indefinitely. That same day, I called a locksmith and had the locks on my apartment changed. It was not an act of impulse or anger. It just seemed like the most logical thing to do. None of my other friends had unrestricted access to my home, so there was no reason she should continue to have it after she ended things and walked out. After that, I started gathering all of her belongings. It was not a quick or easy task. There were a lot of clothes, books, important documents, and countless small items that accumulate over time. I carefully packed everything into several large moving boxes. I did not break anything, throw anything out, or hide anything from her. I simply organized it all and stacked the boxes neatly by the front door, ready for her to pick them up, just as she said she would. Her trip lasted about 5 days. During that entire time, she never once tried to contact me. I did not reach out either. I just silently watched as she continued to post photos and updates, as if nothing had happened. Our mutual friends filled her comments with supportive messages and inside jokes. That detail stuck with me, though at the time, I did not fully grasp what was going on behind the scenes. On Monday morning, knowing she was back in town, I finally got a call from her. I answered calmly. "Hey, Chris," she said, her voice breezy, as if nothing had changed. Then, with complete casualness, she asked, "Can you bring me some documents I left in my desk drawer and my laptop? I'm at my co-working space." Her tone was not that of a request. It sounded more like a habit, as if I were still her personal assistant and part of her daily logistics. I took a deep breath before I replied. "You can come get them," I said evenly. "I'm busy." There was a short pause on the other end. Then she replied with a simple, "Okay," though her tone was more annoyed than surprised. The call ended there. About half an hour later, I heard a noise at my apartment door. I recognized the sound immediately. Her familiar footsteps in the hallway followed by the repeated jiggle of a key, trying to find its way into a lock that no longer welcomed it. She tried once, then again. But the satisfying click of the deadbolt retracting never came. I walked over and opened the door. Jessica was standing there, a look of clear frustration on her face. She was holding her purse in one hand and her phone in the other. The moment she saw me, she demanded, "What's going on? Why won't my key work? Did you change the lock?" "Of course," I replied calmly. "Friends don't have keys to my apartment." Her expression shifted instantly. The annoyance morphed into pure disbelief. "That was so unnecessary," she said. "You could have at least told me." "We broke up," I reminded her, my voice steady. "You left and said we're friends now. I'm just acting accordingly." I then stepped back and gestured toward the stack of boxes by the door. "All your things are right here. It would be great if you could take them with you now, because they're starting to get in the way." That phrase, "get in the way," clearly struck a nerve. I could see it in her face, in the way she pressed her lips together. She did not yell, but her voice was laced with irritation. She told me she did not expect me to react like this, that I was overreacting, and that there was no need to be so cold. I did not argue or raise my voice. I simply stood my ground. Finally, she started moving the boxes, albeit reluctantly. She took her time, as if she was hoping I would change my mind or say something to stop her. But I did not. When she had moved the last box into the hallway, she left without another word. I closed the door behind her, and, for the first time in days, I felt something new, a profound sense of relief. Hours later, I began to understand the full context of the situation. Jessica and I had been part of the same friend group since before we even started dating. It was the same group we hung out with on weekends, celebrated birthdays with, and planned get-togethers with. What I had not known was that many of them were already aware of what was about to happen. I pieced it together slowly, through indirect comments, awkward silences, and a few strange looks. It eventually became clear that our breakup had not been a surprise to anyone but me. Jessica had talked to them about it beforehand. She had told them about her doubts, her plans, and even the vacation she was about to take. In other words, I was the last to know. That realization hit me harder than the breakup itself. Not because I expected her to keep a secret, but because it meant that while I was still living our relationship as something real and shared, she was already orchestrating her exit, with a full audience. I had been given no time to emotionally prepare. They all had. That same evening, the group decided to go ahead with a party that had been planned for weeks. They did not cancel or postpone it. It just happened, and I was still invited. I decided to go, though I was not entirely sure why. Maybe it was out of habit, maybe curiosity, or maybe I just wanted to see for myself how things would be now that everything was different. At that moment, I could not have imagined that the night would mark a definitive turning point, not just in my relationship with Jessica, but in how she would begin to face the real consequences of her "let's just be friends" proposal. I went to the party with no clear expectations. I had no intention of causing a scene or confronting anyone. I just felt that after everything, I needed to see the dynamic with my own eyes. I wanted to know if my feelings of being isolated were justified or if I was just being overly sensitive. I arrived early, said hello to a few people, made some small talk, and tried to maintain a calm demeanor. At first, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. However, I did notice that some people looked at me differently. A few watched me cautiously, while others seemed visibly uncomfortable. It was not hard to tell that many of them knew more than they were letting on. I decided to just be polite and keep to myself. A short while later, Jessica arrived, and she was not alone. She walked in with a guy I had never seen before. She seemed completely at ease, even cheerful. She introduced him casually, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "This is Julian," she said, offering no further explanation. He, on the other hand, seemed a bit out of place from the start, as if he was not entirely sure what he had walked into. Still, he stayed by her side for most of the night. They did not kiss in front of everyone, but their intimacy was obvious. They would lean in to whisper to each other, share private laughs, and exchange long glances that made it clear there was more than just friendship between them. I watched it all from a distance, with a strange mix of indifference and validation. If I had had any lingering doubts about whether our breakup was truly about monotony, that night completely erased them. But as that was happening, something unexpected began to unfold. Maya, one of Jessica's close friends, started acting differently toward me. Up to that point, our relationship had always been friendly but distant. She was nice, but we never had deep conversations. That night, however, she came over to greet me with a warmth and enthusiasm that was unusual for her. We started talking about simple things: work, funny stories about our friend group, memories from past hangouts. The conversation flowed easily and naturally. As time went on, I noticed she was staying close by my side, closer than was typical for us. She laughed at my jokes, lightly touched my arm as we talked, and made a point to maintain eye contact. At first, I did not read anything into it. I just assumed she was trying to be kind and show support after the breakup. The night continued on that track. Jessica spent her time with Julian, and I continued my quiet conversation with Maya. At no point did I do anything to deliberately get anyone's attention. I was not putting on a show or trying to prove a point. I was simply being myself, without the constant weight of managing someone else's emotions. That is when the most tense moment of the night happened. Maya and I were in a corner, laughing about something trivial. She was standing close to me, but nothing inappropriate was happening. Suddenly, I sensed someone approaching from behind. Before I could even turn around, I heard Jessica's voice, dripping with sarcasm. "Chris, what are you doing? You two look pretty cozy over there." The atmosphere shifted in an instant. Nearby conversations died down, and a few people subtly turned to watch. Maya went silent, clearly uncomfortable. Something inside me snapped. It was not a calculated move, it was pure instinct. I wrapped my arm around Maya's shoulders and pulled her into a firm, protective hug. It was not aggressive, but the message was clear. Then I looked directly at Jessica and said, "And why do you care?" A heavy silence fell over our corner of the room. Someone made that low, uncomfortable sound people make when something awkward and direct has been said. Jessica stood frozen for a second, as if she could not believe my response. Her expression hardened. "And you don't care that I came to this party with someone else?" she retorted. I looked at her, my voice completely calm. "No," I said. "I don't. We're just friends, remember? Do whatever you want." My words landed like a ton of bricks. They did not just affect Jessica. They also hit Julian, who had been watching the whole exchange from a few feet away. His discomfort became palpable. He glanced at me, then at Jessica, then around the room as if searching for an escape route. Without a word, he gave an awkward shrug and walked away. Jessica, visibly furious, followed him out almost immediately. They left without saying goodbye to anyone. It took several minutes for the atmosphere to return to some semblance of normal, though nothing really felt the same after that. I released my hold on Maya. She looked at me with a mixture of surprise and nervousness, still processing what had just happened. We stayed and talked for a little while longer, but the light-hearted mood was gone. When I finally left the party, I felt a strange sense of calm. It was not triumph or satisfaction. It was the quiet confidence of knowing I had acted in a way that was completely consistent with the new reality she had created. If we were really just friends, then I had nothing to explain or justify. The night ended there. The next morning, I woke up to over 20 missed calls and texts from Jessica, all sent in the early hours. None of them were apologetic. None asked for an explanation. They were all accusations. "How dare you treat me like that in front of everyone? What you did was so disrespectful. What's going on with you and Maya? She's my friend. Don't you dare mess with her. I bet you two had something going on before we even broke up. I read each message calmly, but I did not reply to a single one. It was not because I had nothing to say. It was because I understood something crucial in that moment. Any response I gave would just fuel a drama that was no longer mine to participate in. She had unilaterally decided to change the terms of our relationship. I had simply accepted those new terms and was acting accordingly. I put my phone on silent and went about my day. For the first time since the breakup, I did not feel guilt. I felt consistency. And while that was deeply uncomfortable for her, for me, it was necessary. 2 days later, something I never expected happened. Maya called me, crying hysterically. It was not a quiet cry. It was the desperate, gasping kind that makes it hard to form words. It took her several minutes to calm down enough to explain what was wrong. Jessica had started sending her messages. At first, I assumed they were just typical, jealous texts filled with passive-aggressive remarks. But what Maya showed me was something far more serious. These were not just angry words between former friends. They were direct, aggressive, and deeply disturbing threats. Some of the messages read, "If you get close to him again, you'll face the consequences. You're just an opportunist, and you're going to get what you deserve. You better hope you don't run into me on the street. You know I know people who can cause problems. I'm just telling you to think very carefully about what you're doing." Reading those messages filled me with a mixture of immediate anger and deep concern. They did not sound like something typed in a moment of fleeting rage. There was a clear, calculated intent to intimidate and cause real fear. Maya explained that she had initially tried to ignore the messages, thinking Jessica was just lashing out. But when the last one arrived, she felt she could no longer dismiss it. She was afraid for her own safety, and she was also worried about me. She was unsettled by how out of control Jessica was becoming. Without a second thought, I drove straight to her apartment. When I got there, Maya was visibly shaken. Her face was pale, and her exhaustion was evident. Her eyes were red and swollen, and her hands trembled slightly as she held her phone, showing me the screenshots she had saved. After seeing the evidence, there was no doubt about the severity of the situation. We sat and talked for a long time, trying to analyze everything as calmly and logically as we could. Neither of us wanted to escalate the conflict, but we also knew we could not just sit back and wait for Jessica to calm down on her own. At some point during that conversation, we came to a difficult but necessary conclusion. We needed to file a police report. We went to the station together. The process was long and emotionally draining. We had to explain the entire history, show them the threatening messages, and repeat details that were uncomfortable to revisit. But we both knew it was the right thing to do. This was not about revenge, it was about ensuring our safety. When we finally left the station, Maya asked me something I did not expect. She asked if I could stay with her that night. She did not say it with any hidden meaning or ulterior motive. Her request was born out of pure fear. She simply did not feel safe being home alone. I agreed without hesitation. That night, we did our best to distract ourselves. We made some pasta and put on a couple of light-hearted comedies, the kind you do not have to pay much attention to. We were both just searching for a sense of normalcy, even if it was temporary. As the hours passed, the tension began to fade. We started to laugh again, talking about our lives outside of all this chaos. At some point, as we were sitting on the couch, the atmosphere shifted. It was not sudden or forced. It was quiet and slow, a look that lasted a little too long, a subtle gesture of closeness. Without a word, we moved closer. The kiss that followed was not planned. It was intense, filled with all the stress, confusion, and emotion we had both been holding back. In that moment, there was no guilt, just two people finding comfort and safety in each other. Things progressed from there, but the details are not what is important. What matters is that everything was consensual and mutual. It was an emotionally complicated situation, but it was also genuine. It was not a reckless decision. It felt like the natural result of everything we had been through together. The next morning, I woke up with a strange feeling, a mix of calm and a hard-to-explain sense of alert. It did not take long for that feeling to be justified. Suddenly, we heard a loud, violent banging on the front door. It was not knocking. It was pounding, accompanied by shouting. I recognized the voice instantly. It was Jessica. She was screaming Maya's name, yelling incoherent things, and demanding to be let in. Maya started to tremble. She quickly closed her bedroom door and looked at me, her eyes wide with panic. We did not waste a second. We called the police. When the officers arrived, Jessica was still outside, completely hysterical. After they intervened and started taking our statements, a chilling detail came to light that changed everything. Jessica had hidden an AirTag in my car. That is how she knew exactly where I was. It was not a coincidence or a lucky guess. She had been tracking me. That fact, combined with the written threats and another detail Maya shared, completed the picture for the authorities. She told them she had also woken up to find an insulting word spray painted across her front door. The situation escalated into something much more serious. Jessica was escorted from the property. In the following days, a restraining order was issued to protect Maya, and Jessica was also hit with a significant fine for the harassment and property damage. When it was all finally over and the quiet returned, I sat down and reflected on everything that had happened. For a long time, I believed the core problem was the breakup itself. I thought my pain was just about a 2-year relationship ending. But as I thought it through, I realized that was not it. The real issue was something else entirely, a failure to set clear boundaries from the very beginning. I had mistaken my willingness to be understanding for a license for her to be permissive. Jessica wanted to redefine our relationship on terms that only benefited her. She wanted the freedom of being single without the consequences, the intimacy of a relationship without the commitment, and a sense of control without any of the responsibility. The moment those terms stopped working in her favor, she lost all control. From all this, I learned a vital lesson. Being clear is not the same as being cruel. Setting boundaries is not a form of punishment. It is an act of self-respect. And agreeing to the idea of being just friends does not mean you continue to act like a partner after the relationship is over. I do not know what the future holds for Maya and me. I do not know if what happened between us was the start of something new or simply an anchor in the middle of a storm. But I do know one thing for sure. Acting with consistency, even when it made others uncomfortable, was the right decision. Sometimes, all you have to do is take someone at their word to make them reveal far more about themselves than they ever intended. Comment: I believe stories like this hold a mirror up to our lives. Setting boundaries isn't about punishing someone else. It's about honoring yourself. It is one of the kindest things you can do for your peace of mind. True self-respect often operates quietly and consistently, without the need for drama. You are not responsible for managing another person's reaction to your boundaries. Sometimes, the most powerful choice we can make is choosing calm over chaos. Healing truly begins when you decide that your well-being is non-negotiable. Remember to be as kind to yourself as you are to others. I hope you take a moment to consider where you might need to protect your peace. Always remember that your worth is inherent and does not need to be proven. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.